Welcome back to the Killah Cortez Show. The following is an interview with Bonnie Bloomgarden of the band Death Valley Girls. A little KC news. I'll be at the When We Were Young Festival 2023 for both days, and in honor of, I have a couple of covers dropping on Spotify October 20th, 2023. One each from two of my favorite bands, the Get Up Kids and Yellow Card. I actually got to see the Get Up Kids a few days ago at the Wet Hot American Summer Tour that featured the Get Up Kids, Motion City Soundtrack, New Found Glory, and the All American Rejects. It was a blast rocking out to these guys for the first time in such a long time. So anyways, if you're going to be at the When We Were Young Festival, shoot me a DM on Insta and let's hang. For the better part of a decade, LA's scrappy rock and roll mystics, Death Valley Girls, have used their music as a means of tapping into a communal cosmic energy. On albums like Glow in the Dark, Darkness Reigns, and Under the Spell of Joy, the band challenged the soul-crushing banality of modern society and celebrated true, magical, infinite potential through a collage of scorching proto-punk riffs, far-out lyrics, and lysergic auxiliary instrumentation. Their latest album, Islands in the Sky, Death Valley Girls' mastermind, Bonnie Bloomgarden, uses the band's anthemic revelries as a guidebook to spiritual healing and a roadmap for future incarnations of the self. And while these may be the loftiest aims of the Death Valley Girls to date, the resulting music is also by far their most infectious and celebratory. I met Bonnie earlier in 2023 through friend of the show, Jake Bowman. Bonnie was recording episodes for her own podcast, the Death Valley Girls podcast, where she was interviewing abductees and experiencers from the group CERO, aka the Close Encounters Research Organization. In that pod, we went over my personal contact experiences with the phenomenon to date. I'll drop a link to that episode in the show notes. We had a great conversation, and it only made sense to do an episode with Bonnie at a later time, and that time is now. I apologize in advance as there was a little glitchiness in the audio feed at times, but in line with the spirit of the Death Valley Girls, we're going to roll with it and be psychic. More on that later. I interviewed Bonnie remotely from her home in Los Angeles. You can find the show notes, links, and a full transcription of this episode in the description below. You can also find a link to the Killah Cortez Discord where we chat all things KC. Sprinkled in between the segments of this episode are songs from my Songs for the Apocalypse playlist, some of which were chosen by the Death Valley Girls. You can find the link for this playlist in the description below, and lastly, you can also find this episode on YouTube. However, it will be without the music between the segments. If you like what I do, please be sure to give me a 5-star rating on Spotify or follow or comment on YouTube. Without further ado, enjoy this interview with Bonnie Bloomgarden of the Death Valley Girls. So let's start with the Death Valley Girls. Y'all just passed the decade mark. 5 albums later, countless tours. If you were to tell someone who you just met at a party what the Death Valley Girls is all about in 2023, what would you say?
I'd say we're cosmic gospel rock and roll band, trying to make you know that you fit in.
I love that.
It's true. It's funny.
What's the origin of the name Death Valley Girls too?
I think Larry made it up. He had I watched all of Lost. I don't know if you know how many episodes there are of that show, but I had not seen. I can't watch TV while it's on. I have to watch it all at once. So I didn't know what I was getting into, and I watched all of Lost in the 2 weeks we were naming the band. And so all my ideas were so far out and not hitting right. And he came in with just that one, and it was oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Kind of play on B-movie horror sort of, genre kind of stuff. But yeah, it's funny, I don't necessarily like bands with the word girls or boys in it. Having the word death, you wouldn't think about it, but it causes a lot of friction. So yeah,
That's funny. It's funny because I didn't think about that because my artist name is Killah Cortez.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of the same friction, I think. People either think I'm a rapper or they're just whoa, what is this you super dark? And I'm my stuff's kind of actually really poppy.
Yeah, when we do stuff for kids, sometimes charity or whatever, or groups, they'll be can you think of another name for this? And I'm oh, it's Death Valley's a place, but I get it. like we don't need to be thinking about that. Or do we?
Yeah, that's when you drop in the DVG.
Yeah. So that's a good idea. I actually didn't think of that.
What would have been some of the alternate names in another universe?
I mean, I thought of some really dumb ones, like plays on words that are so stupid, like just like 4-leaf lover, or like Jupiter berries, or just things that aren't that memorable. We were ex-Ghost for a while. That was our first name. And it's so weird because that makes so much more sense to me now. Like my obsession with the afterlife and ghosts I think was like 0 when we thought of that, but then it wasn't good enough,
Yeah. It wasn't ready for you at that time.
Yeah, we have a few posters with that name printed on it, and it just doesn't look right.
Wow, the deep cuts.
Yeah, super deep cuts.
So in other interviews, I've heard you refer to your songs as like mantras or chants. What does that mean to you, and how do you think that translates to the listener?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, something I think is really weird that either you will think is really weird or not is like, ever since when I was a little kid, every essay I ever wrote, all my homework, everything, I thought the whole point of it was to say why that thing you're learning makes the world a better place. So it's hilarious. Like, I have some of my old homework, and it's like, when we learned about Napoleon, or when we learned about whatever, like the thesis was like, why algebra makes the world a better place. And so I think there's some core thing in me that feels the need, if I learn something that is helpful, or if I figure out something that like causes me comfort or whatever, I feel the need to tell other people, maybe like the same way like religious people are like, have you heard the good news? Like, just so anytime I find something, it just becomes a song naturally, and then I just want to tell people. And then I think like all of our songs just happen, or pretty much for the last like 3 or 4 records are kind of like mantras or spells or things you can use or that I hope either at least I would use when I forgot that there was ways to be hopeful, or things to help guide you out of whatever, or through whatever, or help, or just be a fun song to listen to while you're going through whatever. And I mean, it's funny and sounds weird, but yeah, it's just like the last record, there's like a spell you do to like wash away the day. It's for like when you're in the shower. There's the spell for like walking spell. There's a in between sleep and awake spell, this state called Hypnagogia that like is supposed to be really good for manifesting. So all the songs kind of are, I guess, spells or chants or whatever.
That's super cool. Yeah, I've heard about that Hypnagogia thing before. I didn't know that's what it was called. But there's a story about I think it's Benjamin Franklin who said that part of his secret for like manifesting ideas was he used to sleep in a chair with a cup in his right hand, and he would like fall asleep and like let the cup fall to try and catch the idea when he was like about to fall asleep.
Wow, that's so cool.
Right? I love this quote from an interview you did in the AP. You said, "The stage is where we can all go at the same pace and do the same thing. But in the studio, we all have a way different pace. I like to channel it, leave it, and move on. I love mistakes and variation. But if something isn't getting done, I'm like, I'm not fun in the studio. I'm trying to pull the purest thing from the stars. Everyone is physically connected. And if someone isn't being psychic, I'm like, why aren't you being psychic?" I just love that, because like, in like doing research for this interview and understanding your creative process, I've come across artists who are very much like this, and it's always been such a mystery for me for the artists that can really just be at the front end of like the wave where you're just like letting it happen as it happens. So why don't you tell me about that and like how is that process for you? Were you always like that, or is it just like something you developed?
Yeah, well, that's funny. It's so funny to hear that. Like, I forgot that I said that because I guess mainly the thing I would realize is being this type of way, like the world kind of teaches you that everyone's supposed to be all things. Like everyone's supposed to be good at starting, good at doing, and good at finishing every single project. And it's like, that is not true. Like some people are good at starting and some people are good at finishing. And like, that's what makes the world work. And that's what makes art amazing. And like, I guess the way I make art, and I didn't know it was like that. I just was like, you're such a slacker. You just, what's it called? You just wait until the end. You're just the worst at doing anything. You just suck or whatever. Like, why do you always procrastinate? Like, I think the most important lesson of that I learned, and most important thing I can give you with you asking this question is that I didn't know that was my process. Like, I hated myself for it. I was like, you write all of the lyrics for every single song, all 11 songs on the day you have to sing them. Like, that feels horrible. But like, once we did like 3 records, I was like, that's just how you do it. Like, that's obviously how you do it. It's not like you shouldn't be shocked. You shouldn't be mad at yourself. You can be scared. Fear is like not something you can control when you leave stuff till the end. But once I realized for the last 2 records, that's just how I write. Like, I found peace in it, and then that was just how I write. It wasn't like, what it was before, which was all the things that are wrong with me so evident in this one, like project. And it's I don't know why I do it that way, but I have to fully be it just has to come through me. It has nothing really to do with me. So I don't like to do it more than a couple times, because it's the more, like, we don't do more than like 2 takes. I won't, because it becomes less and less true to me. And we've had a lot of different people come in through the years and they're like, what? And it's like, yeah, like, get it. And I'm not, it's like, you also want to be fun in the studio, but it is fun when you get stuff on the first or second take. And then, the people that come in and play like saxophone and synth and all that stuff, they've never before. They just do it on 1 or 2 takes too. So I like that energy. And I like it when people say that they can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it, but just that brand new energy. And like, definitely vocal takes I'll listen to later on. You really could have nailed that better, or that rhythm isn't like exactly where you hit it now live. But just knowing that it's like the first time something's being done is super cool to me. And I only recommend it to people that feels true to them, because if it doesn't, it's like hell,
Well, it's funny because I've I work with artists as a producer as well, and I've definitely met artists that work on that fringe, which is really cool to me, because I think inherently when you're a producer, you always kind of end up being the exact opposite of that, where like you want to tinker and like craft, and I think part of my personal journey has been to like teach myself to be in the middle and not want to overcraft.
That's cool.
Because I've been in the studio many times with artists who just like do exactly what you're saying. Like, they'll get the lyrics right then and there. They're like tearing their hair out, and then they're just like, all right, got it. And then they sing it twice, 3 times, and that's it, and that's done. Like, all right, that's it. And you're right. It comes with I think it does get infused with an energy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think also like there's just different kinds of people. Is if I edit and do all that, I could get lost in that for eternity. So for me, coming to this point of like finding it at all is where I have to leave it, because otherwise I'll edit eternally, because it's just like I have that, like, I don't like calling it perfectionism, but I only like using that word because it's like there isn't any perfect with this. So it's like I'll just endlessly be finding something if I don't just lay it down. And
Right.
and then I'd never make anything if I I'd never get anything done if it had to be just, all ironed out or whatever.
I love that perspective. So, kind of segueing into our mutual interest about UFOs and the phenomenon and more mystical ideas. There's an idea that I've explored in other episodes of the KC show about artists, inventors, and musicians getting these downloads. And you can see tons of interviews with musicians who talk about it, including you. I've seen in an interview that you were talking about the process for writing your latest full-length Islands in the Sky. Like you were saying, you were channeling these ideas and you were waiting for it to come. Can you elaborate on that at all? Like, what happens? Like, do you remember it after it happens? Like, what do you feel when it's happening? Or do you even have like any kind of protocol to help make it happen?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think for me it's like my life isn't separate from that. That's like my favorite part of life, so it's like I'm always searching for that download of inspiration, and there's never a time when I'm not kind of just hoping it's gonna happen. But I think the way people, my understanding of it changes all the time, but how I feel now is that it's either like my guides or myself, my soul or whatever, my eternal being that's sending me this stuff, sometimes when I want it and sometimes when I'm just walking. And I think that some people are more intentional when they do art or whatever, but for me, I don't really know. But I think the reason I know that what it is, as opposed to like an idea I have that's just like flopping around in my mind, is like it's this kind of the way people describe telepathy. It's just like this sudden like knowing. It's not thinking, it's not believing, it's just this all of a sudden knowing, and this attachment to this entire, and in this case, song that completely already exists, to the point where I'm like, what song is that? And then I'll maybe even ask someone, is this a song? And I'll be like, no. And I'll be like, oh, cool. And then it's just this song, and I'll either, now that we have like these awesome recorders that live in our pockets, it's like I'll record an idea in there, and whatever it is, I'll just record whatever piece of the song I can kind of engage with the future me that's able to write it or whatever, or something memorable about it, whether it's the drums or whatever it is. I'll try and record as much as possible. And then there's just like years of that, of recording that. And sometimes I noticed on the last record, I've recorded the same like downloads, like, I don't know, sometimes like 50 times over the whole like 5 years. And then it just never was right for then, or I didn't, like, even though I can hear the whole song in some ways, that doesn't mean that it doesn't totally change when we record it. That's like the beauty of a band. So sometimes I'll bring the ideas to them, and then they'll just be like, I don't like it. And I'm like, what? But I just got this free song sent to my head. You seriously don't want to mess around? And I'm like, I don't like it. And so I'll put it back, and then I'll bring it back to them like a year later, and it'll end up being like, they'll be like, oh, cool. That sounds awesome. And it's like, oh yeah, like, but it's that sometimes happens. But yeah, it's this really, I feel like it's the same thing. I feel like everyone has it happen in some different ways, but it's like, to me, the coolest thing in the world, the best feeling in the world. It feels like, yeah, finding a pot of gold, or like eating like the perfect meal, or whatever it is that it is. It's just like all of a sudden this thing is just like full, and it's there's something that's unexpected, but it feels familiar, and it's so cool, and I love it. And that, yeah, that happens for songs and other things too, but mainly like when it happens with the song, I'm just like, yes, like cool. I didn't even do anything, and it makes me lazy because I'm like, I can't really control it. It just happens when it happens. So I'm just gonna like watch TV for the rest of my life, and maybe it'll come.
Yeah. You're like, well, last time I was getting burritos. Maybe I should get burritos again.
Yeah, totally.
So I've read in multiple interviews that musicians, it happens a lot to musicians apparently. It's funny because like you'll hear interviews with different musicians. I think I saw one with Chris Martin from Coldplay, and I saw another one recently with like a rock legend that they were talking about getting these downloads, and they don't refer to it the same way, but you can clearly understand that that's what they're talking about. They're like, yeah, I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden this thing pops in my head, and then I voice noted or I record it down, and it becomes this thing. Have you had a chance to check out the book American Cosmic by Diana Walsh Pasulka? Have you seen that yet?
No.
So,
yeah.
So in that book, she talks about her journey of like basically getting introduced to the UFO kind of disclosure group, the people that are leading it, and one of the guys that she talks about, this guy Tim Taylor, and it's funny because he talks about the downloads that he gets, but it's different. Instead of them being like music downloads, he gets downloads for medical patents. And he says that it's actually kind of a big secret in Silicon Valley that a lot of these inventors, they've channeled into this thing where they get these downloads for different medical patents that they go and sell as like patents and ideas.
Yeah.
And he has a whole protocol that he talks about. Like I think he drinks water as soon as he wakes up. He has no coffee because he says that interrupts it. And then he makes sure to sleep 8 to 9 hours a day, and that's what helps him get it.
That's so cool.
But yeah, it's funny because I definitely get downloads. I definitely tend to get them when I'm either falling asleep or in the middle of the night or as soon as I wake up. That feels like the main time for me. And the problem with that is like I have to keep something near me, especially when I'm falling asleep, because I'm falling asleep and I get it and I'm like, yeah, I'll get that in the morning. And then just like,
I know. That happened to me last night. I wrote a song in my dream and I was like, just get up. And I was like, I'll do it tomorrow. But yeah, totally. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people have different methods for how they can do that more, like on a regular basis. And for me, even like the dream stuff, I've been actually like a project I'm working on. I don't know if I told you before, but I'm trying to, except for last night, I've been recording every song or thing I make up in my dreams, and I'm going to record all the songs no matter how stupid they are. But like it wasn't like it took a while to train to like be like, you have to wake, it's like a training thing. But there's a lot of different, I think that one is that we're all connected, we're all psychic, and we all have the same consciousness or whatever you want to believe. And that I think like, how other people might call it different stuff, but there are just people that can straight up channel like the Arcturians or the Pleiadians, and they do have all of this knowledge, and they do want to help advance civilization, and they do care about Earth. So it makes sense that some people get like medical patent advice, and some people would like, I feel like I'm here to like make, like, as silly as it is, and it is silly, like I feel like I'm here to make songs to make people feel good, which is like funny, not feel good, like feel good being very broad, also feel mad or justified, but it's like I think that it's like I really feel like that's the purpose. It's not I feel like I don't know necessarily that aliens are helping me do it, or if it's a past life thing that I'm like just feel compelled to. But I think anyone that's compelled to do anything, it is of a higher purpose.
Yeah.
It's not like random, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I tend to think that it's we're connecting with our eternal conscious knowledge. I think we've definitely lived what people would call past lives. We've definitely lived many iterations of what we are. I think the reason why it might have a connection so strong with musicians is that musicians learn to do this thing where we trust our intuition more, and it allows the voice to enter. Because I think in the normal day-to-day life of someone, they just have so many thoughts going in their head that there doesn't allow space for them to listen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. And I even agree. I feel that totally too. I think that, yeah, musicians, and I mean, I think to a certain degree, everyone like lets it flow through them when they're at different parts of the day in different ways. Um, and I think that not everyone is that useful. Like maybe it's actually hurtful, or it doesn't help them be present in the moment that they need to be. But I think like musicians, it's helpful, and you can train it. Like it's weird because training your intuition in some ways like really turns off your intuition. I've noticed in other ways, which is like I'm finding to be hard, like touring so much and like coming home for like every other few weeks. I'm like, that same, that flow and intuition. I'm like, when do I eat? Like, I don't get hungry anymore because that's not helpful to my, anything. And I don't know, I don't know. This is something I'm obsessed with, is I haven't craved like a specific kind of food since February because we've been on tour, and I can't stop thinking about it because I'm like, oh my God, like what a strange thing. Most people, you are so like what you crave, you're so stoked for. It's like keeps the day going, like, oh, I crave like nachos so hard right now, and then you have to go get them. But like I turned off that mechanism for tour.
Yeah.
And now I seriously haven't like when someone's like, do you want to go get something to eat? I'm like, okay. Like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, oh no. Like, I have to go to the market or somewhere where I could see the food and be like, not, or like, like Starbucks or somewhere where you can see the choices. Cause sorry, this is like a tangent, but I just realized like yesterday I was all like here in my house with my dog, and I was like, what do we do today? And then I was like, okay, you got to eat. And I was like, I got to eat too. And I was like, you can go anywhere. And I was like, I don't, but what? So I just went to somewhere where like my friend works, and and I was just like, well, what do I even eat? Like, if it doesn't help the machine, because it's like eating while on tour is just to help the machine perform. And then I don't know what's long tangent.
No.
It's like being a fighter or some sort of thing. It's like a athlete can't eat like 7 hours before I sing, so it's just the body is just this thing for music. And now I'm like, what's the body for? Like, it's weird.
I think that's like, it's so cool because I think you just described like entering that creative flow mode. And because that happens, I know it definitely happens in the studio. I forget to eat, and then it's weird. Like whenever I do different creative endeavors, it'll activate different creative parts of my habits. Like I never really watch, like I never really watch TV, but when I songwrite, I suddenly start watching TV and movies, and I'm like looking for inspiration, and then I gotta like incorporate it into my habit. But then once I'm like done with that, I just stop watching it, and I wonder if it has to do with like our reward centers in our brain. Like you stop thinking about it, and so it just kind of like shrinks, and then you're just like, does food even matter?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's also just like it's a hindrance on, like, if you were like hyper focused on like, oh, I need like corn right now, whatever. Like that's not going to help you get the art out, you know, like just being like, oh, there's food here, like, you know, just get a pizza or whatever, you know, just like being easy, simple, not having needs is like, you know, it's like being a monk or something. You're just like, I just eat one just to keep the body going. It's weird. It's a weird connection between body and music is really weird to me. It's blowing my mind because I never thought about it before. And we haven't been since I learned so much in the last few years. I wasn't really aware of any of this stuff, and now that I'm sort of aware of myself as being a being, it's really bizarre to be like, whoa, you know, like now that we're gone all the time, like you have not thought about like, yeah, whatever, like you have not, like, what's your favorite food even? It's like, I have no idea. I used to just really want like quesadillas every day, but like, you know what I mean? It's just so weird.
So that's a good segue because I think this tangent just kneecapped what was going to be one of my next questions.
Okay,
so,
cool.
what are the top 3 traditional 3 entries in the Death Valley Girls Snacks Hall of Fame?
Wow, that's such a good question. Oh my God. Well, definitely goldfish.
Oh yeah. Like, I almost got
goldfish.
A big bag the other day.
Oh, those are so good. Definitely goldfish. I mean, Ricky's favorite food is ice cream, so that's like a big deal for us. I'm pretty sure that we get ice cream like every day. And my favorite food in the whole wide world used to be Doritos Flamas, so that would have been high up there, but I had to cancel that food from my list of foods. So now I'm like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I just think goldfish and ice cream is like top. I'm always drinking ginger tea, just because I learned somewhere that if you drink water or whatever all day, I don't like drinking water. I just want to make that very clear. Don't like it, but if you drink water all day and you stay hydrated, you don't have to drink while you're singing, because you're just hydrated enough that it's great to drink while you're singing, but you don't have to. Like, it won't get dry. And I don't personally really love watching someone like drink after every song. It's just like, you know, like, I don't know. It's just like, come on, like there's got to be a flow. Like you cannot like pick something up, put it down, like go.
Yeah.
You know, that drives me crazy. So yeah, I try and drink, like this like honey ginger thing, just because water, it's not fun enough. So that I would call that a snack. I'm gonna call that a snack.
Okay. I'm a reformed water drinker. I did not like water growing up. I mean, I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't my favorite drink, and now I've just like hammered it into my head to drink water all the time. But I don't think about it. It's at this point, it's like totally unconscious. I'm just like drinking water.
That's incredible. That's heroic. Like that's honestly heroic. Is it? I've just had the flip where it's like intuitive, like where it's like, oh, something doesn't feel right. It's probably that you're thirsty. Yeah. But like that took like a lot, you know.
I do notice I get mildly bitchy if I'm dehydrated.
Aw, that's cute. Yeah, no, it's just, I think probably most people's like minor issues are just dehydration. And it's a simple fix. It's like, I don't feel that great. Drink some water. Is it better? Like 50-50 it is. And what? That was free. Like,
exactly.
You know?
It was free unless you drank Fiji. Then it was $10.
Totally.
You have a podcast, the Death Valley Girls podcast. Everyone go listen. But not right now, though, because you got to finish listening to this. Where you talk with friends, other musicians, healers, and most recently you did a season dedicated to our mutual favorite topic, UFOs and abductees. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your podcast, and then we can go down the UFO rabbit hole a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a podcast. I think it has like a little over 90 episodes. And it mainly started, basically there needed to be another forum to discuss this stuff aside from just after shows, because people don't know when it started, but people would just come up to us after shows and be like, hey, I've never told anyone this, but I saw the Mothman, or hey, like, blah, 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 like, just tell me all this stuff. That's also like a big part of, I don't know why, but I think it's the past life thing, is people have always told me this kind of thing, and I that's cool with me, and I want to be a safe space for the supernatural, but including you, I guess. But yeah, something that happens just after shows all the time, and I was like, initially, I was super obsessed with trying to figure out what happens after you die. That when we started the band, that was like a big thing, and we were kind of like ghost hunters, really into ghosts and stuff. And people would tell me about hauntings and like what seemed like possessions and all this different stuff. And I would record some of the like really epic ones. I'd ask like, hey, can I just record this on my phone? That's insane. Like, that's so cool. And then when COVID happened, I think there was just wanting to, whatever, everyone had a want to talk to people, desire to, just get a chance to really connect with people. And I think that it was like selfishly, like, I was super sick, and I only had I was only awake for about 4 hours a day for like 6 months. And I was like,
wow.
I was like, I'll schedule an interview every day at 12, and that'll be my thing to keep me, just have something to look forward to and work. I like working. And so I just did that, and I interviewed a bunch of different like people I knew that were like psychics or UFO people or witches, outsider artists, all this stuff. And then slowly, it's cool because it starts with like, you could tell the interest is in the sort of like idea that there's life and then there's afterlife, and then like ghosts and all those are like, just this other thing. But then as I learn and as the community learn, it's just like there's just this 3D reality, and then there's this whole other reality that like there's all this other stuff going on at the same time, past, present, all happening at the same time. And it's just like sort of like a thinning of a veil, this veil that I think has, over the 3 years of the podcast, this ability to consciously see this same thing that I'm learning is actually what everyone else is learning, and it was at the same exact time, which is so wild. But just that it's like, it's not separate. These aren't separate, like, into just that it's unveiling to us. And this idea that everyone's like, oh my God, or like, oh, so many people are empaths now. And it's like, yeah, because they just suffered like trauma, and trauma makes you real sensitive and get to see all the little details that you couldn't see before. So now we all, not all, but most of us are empaths, and like,
yep.
That's the beginning of seeing all these other things. And we're learning like all together, all at once, and it's shifting into something I don't know what, but it's so crazy that it's like all happening on my timeline.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear you say that about the trauma, because I interviewed Chris Bledsoe like 2 podcast episodes ago.
Cool.
And
that's so cool. Congratulations.
Thanks. And his whole thing was that like he had major trauma, and I guess people that have studied him have said that there's something to do with trauma and the phenomenon that once someone goes through it, it happens to like unlock it, and then people can suddenly start to see it and they understand it. Because I think what you were saying, like, I think we get more sensitive.
Yeah, well, totally. I thought when people left COVID, they were like, because if I thought that ability to finally feel just yourself, like, oh my God, I feel myself now. I'm alone, so I'm not around all these people endlessly, uselessly. Like, I feel myself now. When I go out, I'm going to be so overwhelmed. I'm going to feel all this, and I thought every single person was going to change because it's just so dramatic. You usually don't even have to feel yourself because you're feeling so many other people. But I think that to me was a real sign, like that trauma does. It upped your your vigilance, your hypervigilance, all that stuff. It just, I think your body is a sensing device for what's actually happening, emotionally, spiritually. And that's what I learned from getting sick, is that the body is trying to tell me something for a while. It was trying so hard, and I was like, oh no, I'm just gonna go on tour and I'm not going to listen to you because you're just the body. Like, you're the last thing on the, it's like, whatever, I'll deal with that later. But your body is like a thermometer. It's like, it's the gauge of what's actually happening. And I think once you step into it and feel it and understand it and listen to it, then you start to really see what's going on and feel what's going on. And I think most people don't do that unless they have a traumatic event. Or many traumatic events. And I don't know if that's because you go into a deep understanding of body or what, but I interviewed someone a couple of weeks ago that had like a traumatic brain injury, and that caused them to be able to have a psychic and medium, that they became a medium. And I was just like, what? It's always there. It's not like that turned something on. It just opened up something or lifted something. And I think it's just that it's your intuition or whatever it is. It's just once you can be fully in your body and listen to all the little cues or whatever, you can see what is fully not your body. And you're like, whoa, like, this room is haunted. Like, I'm not in a bad mood. This room is in a bad mood, or whatever else.
Wow.
But
interesting. Yeah, I think for a lot of us, it manifests in different ways. Like I've noticed for myself, one of the things that I always just assumed everyone could do, but over time I've learned that it's just like a me thing. I've met a few people that it also happens to as well, is like, I have, especially when I'm in a room with somebody, but even on screens it'll work. I can tell somebody's like mood, even if they're trying to hide it. I can usually tell their emotional space pretty like before even sometimes they know it. And
no, I'm just kidding.
Right. And so for a while, like it just kind of helped me navigate. I feel like it helped me navigate socially, like, my interactions with people. But for other people, like I've heard other people getting like genuine, like they get psychic abilities where they can like literally see or hear other people's thoughts, things like that. Or, I think it manifests differently in different people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think what you just said is really cool. And another piece of it is that I don't remember exactly what you said about your background and stuff like that, but I think this just kind of like phenomenon of trauma is like, if you have, it's just an extra sensitivity. And if you are like super sensitive to, like, you can pick up on how someone else is feeling. But I think the thing between that and fully just being like, this person is legit thinking this sentence, like, is just a trusting yourself to believe that, and knowing that you're having a psychic reading rather than like internalize it and be like, oh, I'm making them feel better. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
when you start to like, or try and hop around and stay, try and make them comfortable when it has nothing to do with you, I think is what most people do, instead of like zoning, I don't know, catching the whatever, like I don't know what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah. I think for a long time it was definitely like, it would be akin to like a trauma response. I think now for me it's more just like, I just know, I'm like, oh, okay, They're not having a good day, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I know I'm not gonna say something crazy right now.
Yeah, I guess I can't yet separate it from how it makes me feel. Like I'm able to. I used to not be able to like be around someone uncomfortable. I would like have to make them feel good.
Yeah.
Like, because it was too uncomfortable for me. Now I'm finally at a place where I can be like, oh, okay, that person feels bad, but I still take it like not personally in the way that I don't know how to explain it, but it's like being able to, like how it's just an experience happening outside of you. I think I haven't built my confidence enough to be able to like be like, oh, that has nothing to do with me. I cannot fix that. That is that person. I'm still like, oh,
yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Depending upon how the intensity of what I'm feeling from the other person, I definitely can fall into that. It's happened before, but I've gotten better at it.
That's cool.
You got to exercise that.
Yeah, that's a superpower. Honestly, that's a superpower. That's for real. Congratulations.
Well, we try. We're trying. I know you've been on the road a bunch lately. I wanted to get your thoughts if you had a chance to keep up with the David Grusch bombshell
oh my
revelations and the congressional hearings.
Oh my God.
Whatever thoughts you have.
Yeah, well, first I would just like to say that I don't know what month we're in right now, so I'm not going to lie and pretend I remember when we talked, but yeah, what literally.
I think we spoke like in maybe April. It was way earlier in the year.
Okay. So April, and the hearing was in
I think
July?
That was last month. Yeah, or like late. It was last week of July.
Okay, so when I talked to you, you were the last interview I did for contactees, abductees, and experiencers. I had done it for maybe all of April, and then we started a tour, and none of those interviews did we ever say anything other than just talking about is the only way disclosure is ever going to happen. I had no idea that something like this was going to happen. I can't believe it happened. It was the coolest thing in the world. It blew my mind. I think we were in Europe. Oh no, what's interesting is that we were here in the States talking every night about, because we heard Grusch's interview before the hearing, and the article came out, and we were going around every night saying, did you hear the good news? Like, aliens are real. And we'd be like, yeah. And then we'd say, like, talk about Grusch a little bit, just be like, it's amazing. I can't believe this is happening. But kind of just in the same way where it's like, it's just an interview, NBD, like whatever. And then we got home, and then they had the hearing, and we were like, oh my God. Like,
yeah.
For those, it doesn't matter. For those that don't know, it doesn't matter. It's fine. You don't have to. But for those that have been waiting their whole lives, those people that have lost their jobs, lost their spouses, lost their credibility, lost their, families, they have lost so much. They have not been able to be believed. They have been made fun of. They are just telling their experience, and they're treated like they are psychos. And like all of a sudden, in a real hearing, in a political and legal setting, people are saying that what they've been saying for the past 40 years is real. And that alone is just the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I think that they did an incredible job. Some people, if you're not in this world, it's like, I wanted more, bigger, whatever. And it's like, okay, like they needed to get all this on record to get the people with the money to pay attention. AOC, I think, did a great job. It was, I think, and then after that, we went to Europe, where how news travels is really interesting and really weird. And there, it was like the biggest news was how both sides of the aisle can agree on aliens. It was like a huge, wasn't big, the hearing, but that was like a big piece of news, was that Americans finally united over aliens. And I was like, is this real? Like, this is the coolest.
Well, what's funny about that is like, that's totally lost on a lot of people here. Is they don't realize that it's a completely bipartisan issue. I was actually just at a party not too long ago, and people bring it up to me because they know I'm kind of like way into it, and they feel safe talking about it with me, and this comes up more often than not, and I'm curious to see if it comes up for you too. Is that I always end up kind of getting like, I started doing some research on it, and then I noticed that a lot of it just came from like really right wing places, which makes me think that it's coming from like the right wing. And I'm like, no. Like that it's a bipartisan issue. It's totally not just right wing, like, because in a weird way, it also paints me in this corner. I'm like, dude, like I'm not even about that. It's like,
Yeah, no, totally. We were just in Florida and I was like, hey, I just want to say thank you, Florida. And everyone was like, they gasped. They're like, it's like, thank you, Florida. You did something really important. And everyone was so scared for what I was about to say. And I was like, you care about aliens. And everyone's like, yay. But yeah, I think, it's obviously super complicated and it's complex. Like, but the thing is that when you look at something and you're like, oh, the right wing seems to really care about this. It's like, well, what do they care about? What do they care about? They care about weapons, and they care about defending our country, and they care about the military, and they care about all of this stuff. And it's like, if they care, that makes it seem real, and it's the left wing that I think them being interested in, it is so well-rounded what everyone's care about this is, but I think the right wing being interested actually makes it more valid, because in this way, they don't even believe that some people are trans. So if they're going to spend money on something, like, it's, I don't know, I think that was my thing in Florida. I was like, I don't understand. This guy does not believe people are trans, but he believes in aliens, and that pissed me off for a while. And then I was like, well, that's not doing anyone any good. Like, this guy wants his weapons, he wants his military, he wants our defense, and that's why he's doing it. And if it gets us what we want, which is like peace on earth and like energy, free energy, and all of this stuff, then that's fine. But it has nothing to do with it is totally bipartisan. It completely split down the middle. It's so weird. It does, and it's hard being us, I think, in this time where it's like, like, that was a good question. And that one lady, I can't remember who she was, but some like right wing lady asked the one about the biologics.
Right.
I was like, oh, she seems really smart and really cool. And then I looked her up and I was like,
yeah.
No, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
But yeah, I think that this is a time to just come together about the facts, and maybe this will lead some other folks back to facts and science.
Yeah. Well, my thing is like, we shouldn't be putting prerequisites on issues. Like, before we even look at the issue, we go, oh, is it a right-wing issue or is it a left-wing?
Right.
Like, we shouldn't even think that. We should look at the issue, do your own research, and then make your opinion. And then wherever it lands, because if you're doing it with honest intention, like, it's for the people, and that's what really matters, instead of it like, who is it affiliated with? Like, what's this going to help?
Totally. And it doesn't matter. It's like, what is the best thing for humanity?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And it's like anything, it's like, that's where we disagree on who's going to help humanity. But yeah, this has nothing to do with that. And it's just the nature of reality. So who's going to fight for that? Like, you just have to fucking watch. It doesn't mean you have to like say you love them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
but like,
I found his and David Fravors, and I'm forgetting the third guy, Ryan Graves. I found their testimony, the congressional testimony, very compelling. And
it was so good.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen it, go check out the congressional testimony that they did. And that's one thing you got to understand about this too, is like it's completely bipartisan. Top leaders on both sides of the aisle are behind it.
Yeah.
And keep that in mind as you're listening to what this is.
Yeah, well, sorry, but also I think just watch it. Like, I think that was my biggest issue with, or not my biggest, but that was the biggest issue that kept coming up, is people having some sort of opinion, not about UFOs or anything, but about the hearing. And it's like, just watch it. It's not that long. The testimony they give is only 5 minutes each. It's like kind of the most exciting thing. Like, I didn't know there was congressional oversight committee. Like, I don't care about that at all. But literally all of the like people you know about are talking about aliens in a, and if you're like, oh, people lie under oath, it's like, dude, doesn't matter. Watch this. Like, gets kind of repetitive for me around the hour mark or whatever, hour and a half, but it's short. If you watch it and just think about it as coming from the point of view of someone that has not been believed for their entire lives, has lost everything, or just as from the fact that literally the government is talking about UFOs and aliens, and listen to what they're not saying. What they're not saying and what they're not allowed to say is just as interesting, because they're just basically saying, we have paid for oversight. We have paid for these committees to look into whether or not they're UFOs. We have. And we have found that there's craft in America. And then also after that, 2 weeks later, Canada said they had craft.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, Japan said they had craft. And so it's like this whole thing is happening, but I'm a huge fan of that hearing. We have it in our link tree or whatever. It's one of the things, just so you can watch it easy. It's just, it doesn't say anything that is too hard to believe. It doesn't ask for you to suspend too much belief. It's just three people that are trained at looking at this type of data, pilots, two of them, maybe Grusch is, I don't know, but these people trained at looking at this stuff are saying that they have seen, and I'm not scared to say it anymore, even UAPs. Before I was like, oh, I hate it, but it's like, fine, whatever you want to call it. Like, they have seen it. They were saying 80% of pilots have seen something, but they don't know where to go with this information. Yeah. They don't want to say anything because they're scared. And all of this makes sense. It makes sense. Maybe it's not, doesn't have to be aliens. Maybe it doesn't have to be other dimensional beings. Maybe it's just bugs. Whatever it is, they are seeing something, and like, they're just asking for a place to safely go and say this information, which, if you're thinking about the fact that 80% of pilots of commercial and whatever else, all pilots, whenever you fly in a plane, it's with a pilot who has 80% of the pilots you fly with have seen something, and they don't have anywhere to tell anyone. I don't want someone that doesn't know what to do if they're seeing something in the sky. I don't want someone that doesn't have a clear channel way to go and get this information out and tell, I don't know, the guys on the ground that are like telling them where to, it's like, I think it's important to have a place to go when they see stuff they're not supposed to be seeing.
Yeah.
just for my own safety. I'm going to Australia in a couple months. That's a long flight. Like, I want those people to know where to go if something happens, you know?
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, just as a society, as a supposedly free society, we want to be able to talk about things, and if there's something that we don't know, then we need to talk about it. Like, we need to let science do its thing, figure it out, and not have scientists worry about being ridiculed just because they want to look at it.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah. Great point too, is why be, you know, somebody probably made fun of somebody for writing a song about something that happened in their dream. But now look at us.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is I secretly kind of think that when people look back at this historical moment, it's going to be weirdly compared to like when people, because, you know, when they like discovered the new world, or like when they thought the sun or like the earth was the center of the solar system. Everyone was just like, no, you're wrong. There's no way. And then, of course, it all flipped and everything changed. And I think this might be one of those moments that gets looked back on.
I think so too. That's why I collect like all the funny alien stuff, like the little green man, because I think it's going to be so funny so soon how like silly what we thought this was compared to how extraordinary it is. And goofy. Like it'll just be hilarious. Yeah, especially the little green men. Like, I think it's just going to be the funniest thing in the world. And I imagine that aliens also think it's funny right now, honestly. Like,
man.
I've been getting obsessed with that, just how silly that's going to look. You know, like think about even like how funny a phone looks, like
oh my God,
one of those like just ones that you used to have in your house, just a regular phone.
Insane. I don't even remember that life.
Or like a giant remote control, or like, you know what I mean? Like those things are 20 years old.
A voicemail machine, whatever that thing was. I don't even know what it's called anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, we barely spend the time to think about how crazy our current phones are. Like just conceptually how futuristic that is.
Yep.
But
it's more futuristic than like what they have in Star Trek. It's crazy.
That's the thing, is they have like Star Trek is the only thing that reference like a phone. Yeah. You know, like they didn't in all of the movies. Someone posted something about this today, like where are we in terms of all the like futuristic movies? You know, and it's just funny if you look at the list of all the movies about the future, none of them had people with phones. Because it's just too weird. It's like too good of an idea. It's just, you know, I don't know how they came up with it, but like I remember, carrying around my like giant camera, a Walkman, and like a pager at some point in my life, and just not even thinking like, I wonder if this could be one thing, just like wishing like, man, I wish this wasn't so much stuff I needed, you know, like it's crazy. It's crazy.
I got 2 final questions for you here.
Okay.
What have you changed your mind about in the last few years, and why?
Aw, that's such a sweet question to ask somebody. Man, I like changed my mind. I learned so much stuff every day. That's so hard. I mean, I'll tell you one thing that I think that comes to mind is I used to think that we're becoming our best self. That was something like at the end, hopefully, like we would like if we worked hard and stuck to the right path or whatever, we're becoming our best self. But now I've changed my mind, and I totally know and completely believe that we've always been our best self, eternally and forever. Every lifetime, our soul is our best self, and that we're just conditioned, and it's taken away from us just so that we can exist in this type of 3D reality with this political situation and all of these things that are this experience that I think I believe we chose to have. I think we did choose to come onto Earth. I just think when you become incarnated, you forget that you're an eternal light being, and that you are your best self. And I think I changed my mind, and I think that life is about remembering, not becoming, that you're perfect, and you're eternal. After becoming, you just have to remember,
Wow. I love that. I love that so much that I'm going to change my mind right now. I'm going to make that the last question.
Okay.
Where can everybody find you, Bonnie?
When you look up at the sky and see the moon. No. Every time you see a dog, tell them hi. I'm the internet. It's Death Valley Girls. I'm Paranormal BB. And we have Death Valley Girls podcast, but I'm sure it'll find you when you need it,
Awesome. You have anything upcoming that you want to plug for the Death Valley Girls?
Well, we're always on tour. So I think you can look up at our pages. We're going to Mexico and we're going to Australia, which we've never been to those places, and West Coast. And if you want to talk about anything, write us an email. I don't know. No. I actually am looking for something that maybe is I do want to talk to somebody that had an NDE at some point.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think I can maybe find someone for that.
Yeah, I think that ties in with what you were saying before about the trauma. Maybe, I don't know, but let's keep in touch and figure it out together.
Sounds good. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you so much for that, and we will be talking to you soon.
Cool. Bye.
Adios. Once again, thank you to Bonnie Bloomgarden of the Death Valley Girls for coming in on the KC show. Go check out their Spotify to hear their latest LP, Islands in the Sky, and also go check out their podcast, the Death Valley Girls podcast, also on Spotify. You can find other episodes of the Killah Cortez show, my socials, show notes, links, and a full transcription of this episode at thekillahcortezshow.com. You can listen to my music, buy some merch, or show your support over at killahcortez.com. You can also show support for the show by giving us 5 stars on Spotify or a like or comment on YouTube. Thank you for listening, and until next time, adios.